ready to dive into some really thought-provoking stuff. We're going to be looking at this period near the end of Jesus' time in Perea. It's described in the Urantia book. And, they're captivating stories, yeah, but also some, really challenging teachings about spirituality.
Yeah.
Like, what does it even mean?
Yeah.
And then we get these kind of surprising insights on how to look at, when life throws you a curveball, accidents and stuff.
Yeah, this period, it's really something else. It feels like Jesus kind of shifts gears a little bit, like instead of focusing on miracles and, all the attention on him, his message is really the main thing here.
Right, like, listen up, everybody.
Yeah, like this isn't a magic show. This is about something way bigger.
This is the real deal.
Yeah.
And he really, really lays down the law when when he's with the Pharisees. Like that whole breakfast scene at Nathaniel's house.
Oh, talk about awkward.
I know.
Nathaniel, this well-to-do Pharisee. Right. And he's with all these other Pharisees. And for them, it's all about appearances,
right,
outward stuff. And then Jesus comes in and he just skips the whole hand-washing ritual.
Yeah.
Just sits down.
I can imagine the gasps.
Oh, yeah.
But, that's nothing compared to what he says next.
Oh, he goes there.
He really does.
He doesn't sugarcoat anything. He calls them out right there.
Yeah.
For being more concerned with, looking the part than actually living it.
It's like he saw right through them.
Totally. And what's so powerful is he's pointing out their obsession with all these rituals, the external stuff, but they're totally missing the inner transformation, the real stuff that actually makes a difference.
This is interchange, right?
Exactly. And he even says it straight up, like, you make sure to present a pious and holy appearance to the people, but your inner souls are filled with all manner of spiritual wickedness.
Whoa. Strong words. Makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like putting lipstick on a pig.
Exactly. You get the picture.
It's a good reminder for us to kind of check ourselves, Like, what are our motivations here? Are we trying to impress everyone else, or are we actually working on ourselves, growing? And it makes me think about another story from this time period. It's the one with the 10 lepers. There are 9 Jewish guys and then 1 Samaritan. And all of them, they're desperate. They want a miracle so bad.
Just the fact that they're all together like that, right, says something.
It really does. They're from different backgrounds, different beliefs, but their suffering, that's what brings them together.
Because everyone can relate to suffering.
Right. It's a universal language.
It is.
And of course, Jesus heals them all, but then it's how they react afterwards. That's what gets me.
That's where it gets interesting, right?
Totally. You'd think they'd all be ecstatic, over the moon.
Yeah, right.
But it's the Samaritan, the one who's different from the rest. He's the one who really gets it. The text says he felt exceeding great joy. He just falls to his knees, thanking God at the top of his lungs.
And Jesus even points this out, right? Like, he asks, weren't there 10? Where are the other 9?
Like, what happened to the other guys? Did they forget to say thank you?
It seems like they just expected it.
Almost like they felt entitled to be healed.
It's a powerful contrast,
It really is. It makes you think, like, when we assume we deserve good things, do we miss out on that pure joy of just receiving, like a gift?
That's a really good point. It makes you think about all the assumptions we carry around, like who deserves grace, who deserves healing, who deserves love. What if being worthy has nothing to do with deserving it at all, Yeah. Like, what if it's about recognizing that we receive these things because we're loved and embraced by something way, way bigger than us?
I love that. And, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the Pharisees.
Yeah.
They're both missing something, but in totally different ways.
Right. One's so focused on proving their worthiness,
yeah,
and the other just assumes it.
Exactly.
And then you've got this believer in Gerasa, and he comes up to Jesus with this question that I'm sure we've all wondered about at some point. Like, how many people are going to be saved?
Big question.
Right. Like, you'd expect a straightforward answer.
Totally. Some kind of formula or something.
Right. But Jesus, of course, he flips the script. He doesn't give a number. It's not about that, right? It's not like some exclusive club with limited membership. He's talking about choice.
Yeah.
You got to choose.
You got to actively choose it.
It's got to be your own decision.
It's about aligning yourself with God. Like, your will and God's will becoming one. And it's not about checking off boxes on some list,
Not about that at all.
And it's definitely not about, who your ancestors were. It doesn't work that way.
Doesn't matter who you're related to.
Right. Your family tree doesn't give you a free pass. And then he uses this image, a narrow door.
Oh, right. Right. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy.
Not at all. And he even says, like, don't wait around. Don't wait for a better time. Like, oh, I'll get around to it later,
When it's more convenient, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, now's the time.
Right now, this is it. And don't even think about coming at it with the wrong reasons. Like, thinking you'll get some kind of reward for it later. Like, oh, I did all this good stuff. Now I get my prize.
Like some kind of cosmic transaction.
Exactly. He's saying it's not like that. This is about your heart. You got to really mean it.
This is about real change. And that's got to be hard to hear, especially these days. Like, we're constantly told we can have everything without giving up anything.
It's the opposite of what he's saying.
Totally. We have to make tough choices sometimes. And you know what we have to talk about? The whole thing with accidents.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets really interesting.
This is where things get kind of mind-blowing.
This one's a real head-scratcher.
Because, let's be real, when bad things happen, we want to know why. It's like, whose fault is it?
In nature, right. We need an explanation, especially when it's something painful.
Absolutely. And so, remember when Thomas asked Jesus straight up, like, are spiritual beings behind accidents?
I can only imagine what was going through his head, like trying to understand fate, free will, all of that.
No, right? It's a lot.
And then Jesus, he just turns everything upside down.
He really does.
Like, whoa, okay. He's like, look, I live here too. I'm subject to the same laws of nature as you are.
It's not like he's exempt from the rules,
No, not at all. And then he even brings up those terrible events that happened, the ones everyone knew about, the Galileans, remember? Killed by Pilate's soldiers. And that tower that collapsed, the Tower of Siloam that killed 18 people. Tragic.
Absolutely awful. And he acknowledges that, doesn't he? He doesn't try to downplay it.
Right. But he says those things weren't punishments from God. It's not like that.
Even today.
Yeah.
That's a lot to take in.
I know.
It still trips people up, right?
It does. It makes you think, like, why do bad things happen to good people?
If there's some higher purpose, some reason.
But what gets me is Jesus doesn't try to give us all the answers. Like, here's the reason why you're suffering.
Right. No easy answers.
No, he just turns the whole idea of divine reward and punishment on its head.
And instead, it's like he's saying, this is life, folks. Good stuff happens, bad stuff happens. It's not always fair, but it's not completely random chaos either.
Right. It's not totally random. He connects it to natural consequences. Remember that whole analogy he uses, the fig tree?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The owner of the vineyard wants to cut it down because it's not producing. But then the gardener is like, give it another chance. Let me take care of it. It just needs a little more time.
I love that part.
Me too. And it's such a perfect metaphor. Because it's like, that's us. We got to take care of ourselves, make choices that, like, work with the natural order of things.
Yeah, like, we can't just expect to thrive if we don't put in any effort. You know? We have to do our part.
Exactly. Nourish ourselves, connect with that divine spark within. It takes work.
It's about realizing we have free will.
Yeah.
Right? But we're also part of this bigger picture. And there are these principles at play. Like, we can choose to align with them or not, but those choices, they have consequences.
Absolutely. Consequences. And when we work with those laws, we set ourselves up for growth, for, feeling good and whole.
It's powerful. We're not just helpless bystanders.
Yeah.
We have a say in how our life unfolds. But even after all that, the text even says the apostles, they were still struggling to wrap their heads around it.
Sometimes these big truths, they take a while to sink in.
You really do.
You can understand it in your head, but until you feel it in here.
Yeah. In your heart.
It doesn't quite click,
It makes you think about teachers. Like how patient they have to be, especially when they're trying to keep something totally new.
Oh, for sure.
And speaking of someone who is trying to teach something new, we should probably talk about Abner.
Oh, yeah.
And that whole community in Philadelphia.
Totally.
Because they were all about open-mindedness.
Yeah.
Thinking for yourself,
Absolutely. They were like a breath of fresh air. After running into so much resistance everywhere else, Jesus finds this community. And they're not just open to his message, they're all in.
They're like, tell us more.
Yeah. And it all started with Abner. What a guy.
He's described as like tenderly loving, but also dogmatically uncompromising. I mean, it's quite a combination.
Right. Talk about a paradox, but that was Abner.
Yeah.
A real original. He loved Jesus's teachings, like really took them to heart, but he also wasn't afraid to question anything.
Even if it was the apostles.
Especially the apostles, like Peter, James, even Paul. Later on, they had some real disagreements. How to interpret things, the whole direction of the early church. Abner had his own ideas about how it should be done.
Wow. It's kind of mind-blowing to think, what if things had gone differently? What if people had listened to him more?
Right. I mean, Who knows? But even though most people haven't even heard of him, his story's still important, I think. It reminds us that there's never just one right answer when it comes to spirituality, you know? Like Abner's story, it's like its own little deep dive.
Right. Within the deep dive.
Exactly. He
Yeah.
makes us act like, whose interpretation am I buying into here? Is it really mine, or am I just going along with what everyone else is saying?
Even if it doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah. And it takes us back to the heart of this whole thing, this look at Jesus's time in Perea. Because whether you agree with everything in the Urantia book or not, it definitely makes you think twice about some big stuff.
Spirituality, yeah.
Life, even. And even about Jesus himself.
Because it reminds us that there are always new ways to see things. Even stories we think we know. It's like, I don't know, peeling back the layers of an onion or something.
That's a good analogy. There's always more underneath, more to discover.
That's what I love about this kind of exploration. It's a process.
Totally. You never really reach the end. You just keep discovering new stuff. And sometimes those aha moments, they come from the sources you least expect.
So to everyone listening, as you're on your own journey, remember Abner, right? That guy was fearless. And that community in Philadelphia, they were open to something new, something different.
And they embraced it.
Yeah, they really did. And remember that finding your own truth, it's a journey.
As a lifelong adventure.
It really is. And sometimes the most amazing discoveries happen when we dare to question, to really explore, and to be open to the unexpected.